Hey, good morning, YouTube, everybody out there joining us for a bright, uneventful Thursday morning, right? Hopefully it's semi-uneventful. Nothing crazy happening in anybody's world out there. The Chinese didn't invade overnight. Nothing like that. All right. Welcome back to the chat this morning, folks. I think there might be a little more to review this morning, but we shall see how this goes. But the memo is coming out today. Lots of bureaucratic back and forth going on about the memo with the state of its condition and its legitimacy and everything else. Lots of people claiming it's not accurate when it's just a couple of commas and some misspellings that were corrected. It seems like we'll see how this goes. I'm pretty sure that they're going to try to cover their butt as much as possible. Taking the FBI's word for a memo about themselves is fairly ludicrous, right? But that seems to be the situation. The media is running with the FBI narrative, but yeah, of course they are. It's about them. So the Fourth Estate's in league with the FBI to try to keep this cover up going. We will see what happens when that thing actually pops and how bad it actually is. A lot of people are concerned that the hype is not gonna live up to the hype. The hype is it's been overhyped to the point of it can't possibly, be as bad as what everybody's supposed at this point, right? But we have to wait and see on that. So let's move on to some other stuff and things that aren't in the U.S. news, or at least I couldn't find it yet. On the U.S. side, this is on the UK side, a U.S. story. So we deployed a carrier where a off-coast Russian ship was spotted. So this is the incident we were talked about a couple of weeks ago off the coast of North Carolina, I believe is what they're referring to. Let's see on down here. No, they're deploying it. Okay, this is a carrier deploying from Norfolk. I think they're trying to tie two things together that aren't related. Might be what the British are trying to do here. They're trying to relate that spy ship that was found off the coast of North Carolina with the deployment of this carrier group. The key thing to remember is a carrier doesn't go anywhere by itself. I know let's find more out on that. I don't think it's quite what they're making it out to be. But people are trying to continue to push the U.S.-Russia narrative for some reason. Continuing to see about the flu stories in the Wall Street Journal this morning. You know why you didn't see these things in the past? To deal with flu onslaught, emergency rooms expand into waiting rooms. Because when we got the flu, our parents were smart enough to keep us home and take care of us, or our grandparents, or somebody. People nowadays just feel a little sick and they go to the waiting room. I wonder why. Well, back then we really couldn't afford it. Nowadays, everybody's got insurance. Somebody else is going to pay for it. Why not go to the waiting room? Sit there and get everybody else sick while you're waiting in the emergency room. I don't get it. I don't understand people's inability to take care of some of the simplest sicknesses unless you are in a concerned group, a vulnerable group, you already have pre-existing health conditions. You don't need to go to the emergency room. They're not going to do anything for you. You think you're going to need drugs to be hydrated and get over this? It's a problem we got going on, people. Problems. And they throw in a graph that's, like any statistic is probably skewed to their agenda. Feverish activity, cumulative flu hospitalizations rate for each week since early November for the season compared to previous flu seasons. So we're almost at the same number of hospitalizations as 2014-15. So like we were saying when this first popped, we aren't quite as bad as it was a couple of years ago. Just last year was really low. I think we talked about that. And yet, oh, look at this. We're not quite as bad as 14-15. But yet everybody's panicking like it's the end of the world. Stir that pot, Wall Street Journal. Stir that pot, all right? Hey, let's jump into the chat room, see what's going on out here. Oh, we got a full house, it looks like. Walter Davis, good morning, sir. How are you doing? Jay Grady with us. Good morning. Oh, right on. Listening's always good. Maybe we can get you up to speed or maybe ahead of the power curve on some things. Hey, Walker Outdoors, you made it. Hey, all right. Teach you how to set that timer up. What timer are you speaking of for the chat? I think for your side, Walker, all you got to do when you see you won't see the notice of the chat on YouTube until I plan it. I plan it like the night before. So it gets buried in everybody else's videos through the night. So you'd have to look for it on your YouTube subscription page, dig through it, and then you can hit, once you click over to it though, you can hit the reminder button. I'm not sure of any other timer that you're speaking of. Barry Wood, these ABC agencies have gone way too long unchecked. Yeah, well, like I've said, I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, it's not like he didn't run the FBI on the ground as far as any type of controls or anything. Yes, Walter, it seems to be hype by design. Indeed. Jay Grady, you're talking about alerts for the flu or alerts for the Russian thing, or I'm not sure what alerts. I've only hit two things here, but I don't know what alerts you're talking about. Hey, M. Long, thanks for joining us. Central Kentucky checking in. So hospitals are having to cope with all this extra hospital traffic into their emergency rooms. They're using what they call flex spaces that aren't used for routine care. There was stories last month about California hospitals setting up tents in the parking lot to screen patients as they came in. And here's a similar picture down here. A tent and some temporary stuff set up to triage and stuff outside, it looks like, which is good in some ways because it keeps people who think they have the flu away from the general public, other people that are coming in for other reasons so they don't get sick. So there are some good things about doing things like that, but also you're blowing up the hype to a certain extent too, which the Wall Street Journal is probably doing more of that than the hospitals is doing what they think they need to do to stay in business. Is keep operating and keep, things going, trying to do the smart thing. Grady Memorial, it says here, is in Atlanta. That's where this picture is of the tent here in the corner. That pop up? Yeah, there's a better picture. So they got a little bit of a tent set up, all the portable generators, all that good stuff. And this works in Atlanta, and you can imagine this wouldn't work as well up north. where it's a little bit colder. Take a lot to heat a tent like that. But the flu thing continues to get blown up. We'll continue to track it. Let you guys run that down. Any stories in your local area on your own. But they're definitely continuing to keep that out front, it looks like, when it's in the Wall Street Journal, obviously. So U.S., here's a story for, where's Wes S at? All those Tejas guys. Oil production over 10 million barrels a day for the first time since 1970 in the U.S. It's hard to believe we haven't generated as much oil for the last 40 years. That's hard to believe we're just not catching up to that. Imagine how much oil Texas was putting out back in the 70s. The U.S. oil production surpassed 10 million barrels a day in November for the first time in 50 years, nearly 50 years. That means I'm getting too old. A milestone that underscores the growing dominance of the U.S. oil industry. Who could have thought? So in November of 1970, we had a monthly record of 10.044 million barrels. Fairly significant. It's a lot of output, a lot of economic activity. And if prices keep going up, still hanging above 65, they're going to keep that going. Ain't going to slow that down. Nothing stopping that train. Says here, as U.S. pumps more oil, oil imports from foreign countries are shrinking to new lows, and American crude exports are rising. Indeed. The petroleum trade deficit in the U.S. was 2.5 million barrels a day at the end of the year when looking across all types of petroleum liquids, which would be all fuels. That is down sharply from a peak petroleum deficit of 12.5 million barrels a day in 2007, just as the economic crisis is getting started. So what does OPEC usually do when this kind of competition comes out? Cut prices. OPEC cuts their prices, sells more oil, prices go down. U.S. kind of backs off because it can't compete at that price. Little this and little that. We'll see how that turns out in the future and how it affects how the oil prices keep running as that goes on. Let's bounce over to the market side of this while we're here. Checking out the chat room. Hey, Galenas Vilkas has joined us. Good morning. Eat garlic. Yeah, eating lots of things protects you from the flu or helps mitigate the effects of it and everything else. The last thing I would recommend is going to the emergency room unless you're like literally virtually on the verge of death or high fever, all this other stuff. Hey, Walter. Oh, the garlic helps you with vampires? I'm not going to go that far off the rails yet. But as we were just, the oil prices aren't, none of the prices are showing up here in the ticker. Their ticker is down. Maybe it's on my side. But it doesn't look like it. Hmm. Okay. But we also have the issue of the stock market coming up. Last night, the Fed announced it was going to leave rates unchanged. We've talked about this for a long time. The Fed's been preaching that they're going to have 3 or 4 interest rates over the raises over the year, but that directly conflicts with economic activity and the inflation they're tracking with our targets. It's shook up the Wall Street here this morning. They're expecting it to start low off the highs, and we'll see how it affects the bond market. The bond market's been taking off lately. But I can't get any. It was up at 2.7 10-year bond lately, and that could put a lot of crimp in a lot of this economic growth story as cheap money becomes too expensive. Bitcoin was down close to $9,000. That's going out there. There was an article. I was going to hit it up over here that talked about it's the irony of the whole thing with how they talk about Bitcoin, but yet refuse to acknowledge that same problem within the dollar market and other currencies for that matter. So the worries grow of price fixing or price being propped up in Bitcoin. This is the New York Times. Worries grow that the price of Bitcoin is being propped up, but yet they don't get too concerned about the price of the dollar and other currencies being propped up. Because aren't they essentially propped up? What do they think the interest rate change from the Fed does? Props up the price of the dollar. So there is a slight bit of irony, but also the continued back and forth in the media about cryptocurrencies. Sometimes they show how, oh, look at all these people that are making, profits and doing all this with the cryptocurrency. And the next story, they're talking about how it's about ready to collapse and it's falling apart. Definitely putting two strains of thought out there in the public on the Bitcoin side, cryptocurrencies, etc. So it's down quite a bit. Obviously, with so much speculation, it's hard to tell who's in it to win it and who is. There's a story Bitcoin could lose 90% of its value. Well, yeah, so could anything that's on a paper market in Wall Street. Um, see if we can get those tickers to update. Weather-wise, we haven't hit the weather today, but it's pretty adventurous, it looks like, out there. We got snow stretching all the way across the country. That big cold streak is dipping down out of the Canada, coming down our way. So you can see that quite a bit of snow coming from the Rockies all the way across through the Midwest. You guys of Michigan still getting snow. That must be a lot of fun. Looks like you guys out in the chat are still talking about oil production and prices. Yeah, the new pipeline from Russia to China is operating. Is it fully operational? And I know there was a pipeline story. There's several pipelines that have been at works that have been hypothesized to be a lot of the problems in a lot of the foreign relations side, but things seem to keep on going. So we got about 10 minutes left. Anybody else out in the chat got anything they want to bring up? Yeah, M Long, looks like you're definitely going to get in snow soon. But the weather's going to be adventurous for those of you in the Northeast and in the Midwest, for sure. Out here, we're fairly clear, except for, guess what? It's raining in the Pacific Northwest. Ain't nothing changed. There was one more story, if I can find it again. It was up yesterday, but it was briefly about how the view hours on Facebook were down. Like, looked like a significant amount, like millions of hours on Facebook. Here it is over here. Facebook loses daily users, but yet they post record profits. I don't know how they profit on Facebook, apparently through the ads. But people aren't using it nearly as much. And fewer people are adding on, but they're still making money. They're still reporting a profit, it looks like. You talk about tech giants and social media, kind of Facebook leads the way. So either people are finding different ways to do what they did, or they're just seeing the lack of the usefulness of Facebook, I guess you'd say. There's not much use to it. People just get on there and complain for the most part. But that could be a good sign. Barry Wood, you quit Facebook years ago. Hey, everybody's got to sometime. Really, the only reason I'm on it is because I'm so far across the country from family. It's a easy way to share things. And friends, for that matter, not just family. Hey, Walker, we glad you could make it out here too. Hey, while we're wrapping it up, make sure you check out the cards in the top right-hand corner of your screen there. That little eye icon, circled eye. Check out some other channels you may not be aware of here on the YouTube that I check out regularly and like to frequent. Just some recommendations, depending on what you like, of course. Nothing's 100%. So Facebook use is down. Maybe they'll come over here to the YouTube and hang out with us. You never know. Also, we talked about the interest rates. The Fed is not going to be changing interest rates. I briefly browsed over that. I was wanting to CNBC to reload. But Yellen, in her last hurrah, put out a statement because Yellen is out on Monday. We get a new Fed chief on Monday. And in her last statement yesterday said they're going to leave rates as is, not raise them. I wasn't able to see what her concerns were in that statement, but that kind of shook the U.S. stock market this morning. And we're not really down much. They had talked about up to 150. Looks like it's regained most of those losses. And we talked about oil. Oil still holds above 65 with record U.S. output, which means record consumption is going on somewhere. Commodities and the bonds continuing to inch up 2.7 and a little bit over. Someplace those things are going to come together and disagree with each other and possibly cause problems. Yeah, look into the flattened yield curve if you want to kind of delved into what that means for these markets in the economy when the yield curve on the 10-year and the 2-year and the 30-year, what they call a flattened yield curve, and how that shakes out, what that could mean. I haven't seen anything that said it's good. I'll tell you that. What else is going out here? Hey, Kevin Stoll, what's up? Right? Mim Long, they're trying to run a natural gas line in through Kentucky. Nobody wants it though. Oh, it's an old line. They're trying to reverse it, re-engineer it, and reuse it. It was worked on in the 60s, huh? Right. Yeah, Walter Buffett did. He bought a bunch of stuff out here in Nevada too. Yeah, Galenas, you think they're making enough money they could lay a new pipeline, right? Improve what they got. Doesn't always work out that way when they try to make do with what they've gotten. Also, out of yesterday, that train crash of congressional members kind of popped up and then it kind of disappeared. I guess since nobody was really hurt, but the driver of the trash truck, a trash truck hitting a train is not what I would call a regular everyday event. But it's interesting how that story kind of faded away fairly quickly. And not having anybody injured kind of helped to do that, I think. Lots of speculation on that issue. But they were headed to West Virginia for a little of their R&R, I guess. Yeah, fairly risky for you guys in Kentucky to be using an old pipeline for sure. Greenspan article in here talking about bubbles, like he's the master creator of bubbles. He sees bubbles in stocks and bonds, which he helped create. That's funny. Blaming the investors. But when you give people free money, what are they supposed to do with it to try to keep up with inflation, Mr. Greenspan? Hmm? That's funny how people can get up there and spout like they're all high and mighty about people are doing bad things with their money when you create the conditions to cause that. And our sign of the apocalypse for the day, and we'll wrap it up with this, unless there's something in the side chat. People in Seattle are leaving town to get their Coke, their soda, their their pop, whatever it is in the country that you call it, soda pop. The Seattle recently raised a tax on soda pop last year to an outrageous number. It was dollars. It wasn't just like 5 cents. But people in Seattle are leaving town just to buy their soda. Here you can see here's the price increase. He once sold it for $2.79. Now it's $4 on a 2 liter. $4 for a 2 liter of soda. And people wonder why people are going crazy. So that's the taxes they raise in Seattle because of the unhealthiness of soda, when we all know it's just a money grab by the state or the city for that matter. But people outside the city limits, being the ingenuity American driven people that they are, this is just 15 feet outside the city limit, have large signs, get your drinks here, no sugar tax. So he's probably still able to charge a little more, but it's still cheaper than what it is in the city. And he's close enough to the city to make it, travel wise effective. That's good on him. It's like crossing the border of North Carolina to Tennessee to go get fireworks. There's literally a fireworks stand right there on the border. So it's funny how cities and controllers put these taxes in to say justifying to change people's behavior. People always find a way around it. The market always wins. And that's usually the black market, or in this case, the border market, right on the border. It always wins. So I'm going to wrap it up with my stories here, folks. Who all we got out here, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for coming to join us. Barry Wood, Walter Davis, finishing up with us, Kevin Stoll. The missile scare in Hawaii. I know, Kevin, that yesterday the Navy failed a intercept test. The last thing that I heard on the whole alert thing was the guy was fired and somebody else quit that works in the emergency management in Hawaii. That came up yesterday. it's fairly amusing because they kind of talk about the system that they use, how you have to go through a series of screens to push the go button, right? And apparently, this individual who sent the alert was a guy who didn't understand maybe that drills are drills and real is real, and he always took things real, like he always took things way too seriously, maybe. And this is the guy they have in charge of sending out alerts. Yeah, probably not the best choice for the person to choose who to do that. But so that's what I've heard out of Hawaii, Kevin. But also the Navy failed 2 missile intercept tests yesterday. It was on the news. High Pocket 7, welcome to the chat. I don't think I've seen you in here before. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, the whole train going to West Virginia getting hit, very strange story. I agree. Lots of speculation, lots of rumor, conjecture that unless you're there, unless you were on scene, you can't really prove. There's stories of possibly 2 trucks hitting the train. There's all kinds of stuff out there. But a trash truck, professional driver, that would be hitting the train is very strange. I agree. So Glenis says Tactical Tony will move to Seattle to sell Coke. Let's just hope he figures out to sell the soda. Not Glenis, I think Tactical Tony's a little smarter than that. Besides, I don't think the market in Seattle is very good for the white powder stuff. He'd be better off in Vegas doing that if he was going to do that. I think pretty much Seattle's dominated by the green grow and stuff. Barry Wood talking about culturing E. coli. I don't think I want to do that. It sounds dangerous. Can't him long, can't bootleg Coke, not enough flathead Ford V8s left. Yeah, bootlegging these days would be a lot different, for sure, if we got into that situation. Yeah, Walter, we could maybe sign us up for Dukes of Hazzard. Yep. So that'll wrap us up for this Thursday morning. Oh, I see what you're talking about, Barry. You're saying E. coli, the waste from E. coli bacteria is what they put as a artificial sweetener in Coke. You got to figure who's the scientist that figured out that tasted sweet, right? Who knew? I did not know that. I thought it was an artificial thing they generated out of chemical combinations somehow. That is hilarious. But if it tastes good, hey, that always justifies lots of things, right? So, all you up in the Northwest, go find your tax-free soda. Around the Midwest and East Coast, stay warm and dry because it's coming. If you haven't gotten your share yet, you're going to get some weather and then some cold after that. And keep an eye on those oil prices. We got record output and high prices inching up little by little. So lots of things combining. And with the interest rates remaining flat, new change of the Fed chair, some interesting things on the economic front could be coming with a new Fed chair. So thanks for coming out again, fellas. I'm kind of running over now. I got to go. Have a good night, good day, good night, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Live free.